Hey guys, Banana Luck here. Welcome back to another Watcher of Realms video. Welcome back to the 4th episode of my Beginner's Guide series. And in today's video, we'll be covering the 14 best epic units in the game that will carry you even to the endgame stages. Just for context, epics can be used to clear most of the stage 21s in gear rates. You can also clear Nightmare Void with just epics. So there is a lot of things that you can do with them, and these are the units that I think you must keep a lookout for and make sure that you use them to carry yourself to the end game bit in terms of progression. Alright, how I'll be doing this is running through each of this category or rather class of units. We'll be starting off with fighters, then to marksmen, defenders, mage, so on and so forth, healers last but not least. So we'll talk about why each of these units are great, if you can actually get them for free, so on and so forth. And yeah, let's get started without further ado. The first unit that I want to talk about is going to be none other than Wrath. You get Wrath as part of your 14-day sign-in reward, and you also get an extra soulstone of him. I think this comes in like day 28, or was it the second month? Week 2, so about 45 days in. The reason why Wrath is such a great unit is that he comes from the Nightmare faction, where there are a lot of strong fighters early on in the game. We have Volca that's given out for free in the story mode. They pair very well together. We used to have Abomination as a fusion unit. Now we don't have him anymore. We have Salazar, which is a very strong single target burst damage unit if you're early on in the game. So that's why Wrath is worthy of such a mention, because not only is he a 4-star lord, he is also a very good unit by himself. So the reason why I say he's good is that he does quite a bit of damage on his own, and most importantly, when he gets to his A5, he actually gets some self-sustain. So that means that you can actually place him in an area where no platform units can be placed, which means that no healers can actually heal Wrath, but with his A5, he'll still be able to sustain himself, and that's the reason why he is so good in the game for early gamers, especially when you don't have that many access to the very strong fighters afterwards. And if you're watching this video, you're probably in time for the limited banner that's coming up next week. We have Wukong and Kigiri, both top tier fighters, and they are, guess what? Nightmare faction. And that's why Wrath is such a great unit to go after early on in the game. And you get him for free. Make sure you invest in him. Get him to A5. But don't forget that you actually get a soulstone of him in the second month. So don't put him all the way to A5 unless you absolutely need him to be dead. And yeah, that's Wrath. He is my favorite unit whenever there's an epics only guide I need to make. He is always on the list there. Okay. The next unit that I want to talk about is going to be none other than Estrid. Estrid is not a very common unit. I've heard of people doing thousands and thousands of summons without actually hitting a single copy of her. And that's why it makes me think that she's quite rare. But she has risen up in the ranks quite a bit in recent times. Most importantly, she can actually be used in Gear Dungeon 2 Stage 10, which is one of the more mid to end game stages. She does a huge amount of AOE damage. That's a main kit, and she does most of that during her ultimate. And she also has defense reduction in her kit, and she has a couple of good awakenings with this increased attack range, which allows you to place her behind a defender. Other than that, there's also this double strike on A3, and then A5 she gets rage regen to enemies that are penetrated, which basically means enemies that have any debuffs on her, if I'm not wrong. So that's the reason why she's so good. She's just all out good AoE damage. She's going to be used in a lot of parts of the game. If you're clearing campaign and all that, she's very handy as well. So make sure you keep a lookout of her. If you're struggling with AoE physical damage, Estrid is going to be the unit that's for you. Alright, now we have the two fighters out of the way. Let's talk about the defenders. Alright, for the defenders, I think it's pretty obvious for the mid to end gamers. You will know that these are the two units that everyone will always talk about. And the first one is going to be Baron. Once again from the Nightmare faction. Why he's so good? First of all, he's a tank with Unyielding, and that means that he can take in hits even though he takes fatal damage. He will stay alive for about 8 more seconds after that. And he also has a lot of shield in his kit. You can see 100% shield off his max HP. When the shield disappears, there is some damage, but it's honestly not that significant. Now, the other thing that's very significant is gonna be in his A3, where he actually gets the Unyielding for 3 extra seconds, which goes up to 11 seconds instead. And A5 gives him 50% HP restored after the Unyielding ends, which just gives him a tiny bit more survivability. Now, I've mentioned in my other videos, whenever there are resources involved, don't go too hard on your tanks. So for example, if you are thinking to awaken Baron, make sure your DPS units like Wrath or Estrid are awakened 5 before you consider going back to Baron. Alright, the next unit that we're going to talk about is going to be Olague. Olague has no Unyielding in his kit, but he's the one unit that probably has the biggest shield in the game. And the shield replenishes itself automatically, so every 11 seconds, he has a shield that can absorb up to 95% of his max HP, and in his ultimate, he shifts into a stance which gives him more damage reduction and block. But if I can be honest with you, he doesn't use his ultimate much because he relies purely on the silver shield to stay alive. And he's a unit that you can just place there and not even have a healer with good enough gear to just self-sustain throughout the entire thing. And he does have some good awakenings, but I myself didn't actually use any of his awakenings. I actually cleared Void Wraith Nightmare with just an A0 Olague, and I'm very sure you can do the same. And then one good thing about Olague as well is that he is free in the game. You can get him by completing the tutorial in Void Wraith, and that's what people should be getting him from. And there's just really not much else I can mention other than the fact that this guy is a tank. He's a beast of a tank which just stays alive throughout the entire run as long as he has his shields up. And just make sure you don't use his ultimate, which stops him from casting his silver shield. Alright, now that's done for the defenders. We move on to the marksmen. And for the marksman category, it is 2 units that I want to specifically mention. There are some other good marksmen here, but these 2 units are absolutely top tier. The first one is going to be Maul. So Maul is another Northerner unit. He is an AOE physical marksman. And you can see in his kit, he does AOE damage, some knockback, and he also has a passive that does splash damage, as well as a defense reduction of up to 15%, which is pretty nifty. And every time that he does this, when you get to the high awakenings, he also is going to get some slow in his kit. The only downside with him is that his cost is slightly high. But if you're looking for AOE marksman for Gear Rate 3, for example, look no further than Maul. And you can see right here, A1 is the freeze that I was talking about on his ultimate. It lasts for 3 seconds. A3 will give him slow on his defense reduction hit. And A5 is basically going to reduce his cost from 22 to 17, which is a very big boost because I just said it, cost is the biggest problem with him. And yeah, there's really not much else to mention about him. Make sure you don't mistaken Maul for Harpoon, which is Maul's weaker brother. This guy is absolutely dog shit. So make sure you don't mix them up. Maul is the unit that you actually want to go after, and his awakenings are definitely something that you want to gun after. Now, the next unit that I want to talk about is Idril. And Idril is single-handedly the best single target marksman in the epic category of the game. Why do I say that? It is due to her ultimate, where she basically gets global range, which allows her to hit any units on the map as long as they are visible. And with her Awaken 5, she actually gets her ultimate extended by 3 seconds for every kill that she makes. So there's really not much else that I can talk about here. Her other awakenings just increases damage here and there, but the fact that she has global range and a decent set of stats just makes her a very, very handy unit. In Gear Rate 3, you can actually use her to take take down the bosses in stage 321, and even in stage 322, you can still use her to much great success. And a lot of the Void Rift stages, you're going to find yourself using her because she is just simply that good. So she is a marksman, she does do damage targeting airborne units, but that's basically all you have to take note of. Her cost is very low as well at 11, which allows you to deploy her with not much investment required. And just make sure that you use her in the Piercer faction, because most of the time she's not going to do any good in the Watcher faction because she needs that extended range. And make sure you get your Idril to A5, because this is probably the most important awakening to make her very, very usable in other stages of the game. Alright, now we're the marksman out of the way, let's move down to the mages. Actually, before we touch on the mages, I do want to say Tailwind, Eliza, Lunaria are very solid marksman options, Brienne as well. But if you ask me for the best, I would say that Maul and Idril are the best. But that's not dismissing that these other units are not good. I'll just say that if you want to focus on content progression, Maul and Idril are the best options for you. Now, let's move on to the mages. The first mage that, there are actually two categories of mages here. Two are support units, two are gonna DPS units. So let's talk about the support units first because they are much easier to get out of the way. Marri is a free unit that you get from sign-ins, and what she does is basically do a lot of slows because she always hits 3 units every time she does a slow. And she also provides vulnerability of 20% if I'm not wrong when she's max awakened. And she also does freeze with her ultimate. So she's just all around very good crowd control. You use her in Gear Rate 1 mostly, but there are other parts of the game that you use her as well. So make sure you keep her by your side, and whenever you need, there's content that needs some crowd control, Marri is definitely going to come in handy. And you're going to see in the... where was it? No, actually the vulnerability looks to be just 10%. Oh, sorry, it's actually in the skill kit. So you get the extra damage taken maxed out at 20%, but in her awakenings, not that significant. You just get extra freeze, extra slow, but that's basically it. But what you really need to take note of is just the fact that she does vulnerability, which is very important for Gear Rate 1, for example, and also the freeze that just stops units from doing damage to the wall in Gear Rate 1 specifically. Alright, the next unit that we're going to talk about is Laurel. Laurel is a very interesting case because you don't actually use her to do any damage. What you do instead is actually take note of her talent. Upon death, she provides surrounding allies with a restoration of 50% of their rage cap. So basically, you can see in this tile, 9 tile range, so she's in the middle. The 8 tiles around her will all get 50% rage when she is despawned. So death doesn't mean that she has to die. You can actually despawn her and she will give the rage back to units around her. And bear in mind, you need her to be at promotion 5 for this to work. Otherwise, that talent will not function. So that's Laurel. Very, very important for Guild Boss 1, as well as Gear Rate 2, Gear Rate 1, Gear Rate 3. All the Gear Rates, in fact, are going to use Laurel at some point in time, because allowing your units to get their ultimates up sooner will just almost immediately always mean more damage. Alright, so that's the 2 support units out of the way. Now I want to talk about some of the units that can actually do damage. And the first one that we're going to talk about is going to be Eona. Eona is actually the first few units that you will see in the game because you can actually purchase a very cheap 499 W Gold pack, which gives you a copy of Eona. And there's really not much to talk about her. She has slow, she has AOE damage, but it's really the strong AOE damage that makes her such a good unit. In fact, you can use her in a combination with other support mages to actually clear out up to Gear Rate 119 even. And her awakenings are good. It boosts her damage significantly. A5 gives an extended ultimate duration, but there's really not much that I want to mention here other than the fact that she's a very solid AOE mage. So if you have her, make sure you invest in her unless you have legendary mages that are way better than her. But I'll argue that some legendary mages are actually worse off than Eona just because of how poorly this kit is designed. Alright, the next unit that I want to shine the torchlight on is going to be Greed. Greed is also another unit that, actually comes from Nightmare and Cultist faction. You also get him for free, if I'm not wrong, on the 28-day sign-in. He does a lot of slow and damage on his kit, and his awakenings are quite important. There is magic resistance reduction as well, which is different from vulnerability that we talked about in Marri. So make sure you mix them both up together because it'll just amplify your damage even further. But I want to talk about his awakenings. A1 is a pretty big awakening for him. It basically grants you a rotation of always using magic resistance reduction as well as slow in his kit. And then the next, not slow, increases the range of his attack and magic resistance reduction. But the big one that I want to talk about is the A5. So every time he does his ultimate, it's always going to do the special effect both at the same time. So what are the special effects? It can either inflict slow or damage. So A5 ensures that his ultimate will always inflict slow. So make sure you make sure you awaken him if you can. Grid is actually one of the rarer units in the game. You might not summon much copies of him, but the A5 is very, very important in areas where the slow is actually required. Alright, now we have the mages out of the way, let's move down to the healers, which in my opinion, there are 4 very top tier healers, and we only have 6 epic healers, so we really just had to squeeze all of them in. Now, let's talk about all-out healing first. Vortex is probably one of the best epic healers in the game when it comes to healing capabilities. First of all, he has a very forgiving range. You can deploy him in almost all places and he will still be able to cover most of your units. And he has some shield in his kit when he does his ultimate, in his passive as well. When he needs to overheal, which means that his heals exceed the target's max HP, he converts some of that into shield. And his ultimate just ensures that because he does get increased healing multiplier, and he also restores some HP. You can see if the heal exceeds the max HP, 110% of the excess will be converted into a shield. And he is a HP based healer, which means that it's very easy to build him. You just need to make sure he has HP, he has attack speed, as well as healing effect. You don't have to care about attack at all. And he had some good awakenings, but if I can be really honest with you, you don't really need to go after them. Always make sure you focus on your DPS units. Healers and supports come after in terms of priority. Now, next unit we're going to talk about is Midan. Midan has a very unique range in the sense that it's like Marri. She covers the back of one tile behind her as well. She is also a HP based healer, multi-target healing. And the very important thing that she does is Holy Baptism. So what does this do? Heals more, but most importantly, the healing will also dispel all debuffs from all allies in range. And when does this debuff dispel comes in handy? It's gonna come in handy when you're tackling Void Rift, where there's some stages where poison is involved. Midan is gonna be your best option for that. In Samra 2 Apocalypse as well, there's a poison phase. Midan also comes in very handy there. Once again, her awakenings are not that big. I would not go after them. What you should focus on is just getting the base copy of her, using her, and making sure that you always have her when dispels are needed. Now, next 2 healers we're going to talk about are a bit more niche. We'll talk about Hollow first, because Hollow is a very unique healer plus support. So what Hollow does is attack-based healing, different from what we just covered. So to build her, you actually need HP as well as attack at the same time to make sure she survives and also be able to do heals. But what I want to talk about is actually her passive. So when Light of Bliss is activated, which is her ultimate, she grants Rage Regen to all allies with range, and this Rage Regen goes up to 1.4% per second at max level. And you're gonna see right here in her attack range, she also has a very forgiving range, similar to Vortex. And she has very solid awakenings. A1 allows her to restore rage every time she does heals. And what this has resulted in is that in the more endgame parts of the content, where Hollow is needed, people actually build Hollow with close to 0 attack so that she can get more rage whenever she does more heals. So the logic is that instead of doing one big heal where you build her with a lot of attack, you build her with no attack, so she does two small heals instead, which just gives her 1% more rage in that particular example. But if you're early on in the game, don't sweat that, just build her normally and make sure that you survive. But when you get to the later stages of the game where you need to min-max stuff, then that's when you go after this kind of niche builds to actually maximize Hollow's potential. Now the next big awakening is going to be A5. Each class of her ultimate increases the efficiency of accumulating rage, and this stacks up to 5 stacks, which goes up to 75%. So these are big awakenings when you want to maximize her, but early on in the game, if you are short on the Epic Soul Stones, which you can typically get from Tide, just make sure you focus on your DPS units once again. Hollow's awakenings are great, but it's not going to be big enough to change whether your DPS do enough damage. Just focus on your DPS units early on in terms of awakenings, but awakenings are definitely to go after once you get more copies of the DPS units sorted out. Now, the very last healer is going to be Dolores. Dolores is the only epic unit that provides what we call inspiration. We've talked about this briefly in many other parts of our videos, in previous videos as well. But the way that Watcher of Realms works in terms of doing damage is that there is a formula to go after. So it's attack minus defense equals to damage, to dumb it down very simply for you. And inspiration units are very important because you need attack to break through the defense threshold. If you don't break through the defense threshold, you basically do close to no damage. And Dolores is going to be a unit that you use in many parts of the game throughout the entire thing. And she is not the most common unit, so sometimes if you're progressing to the mid-game side of things, if you still don't have Dolores, you might want to look out for a banner that has her to make sure that you secure that base copy of her, because once you secure that base copy, you are going to be able to awaken her later. And one thing I want to make sure that I point out is that Dolores is a healer, but she does not do much heals at all. The reason being that her healing frequency is not affected by attack speed, so make sure that you don't use her as a healer. You're going to be using her as an inspiration unit, and that inspiration only gets activated during her ultimate. And the next thing to take note of here is that in her passive, Graceful Dancing will have a 50% chance to increase her rage by 300, which is basically almost half of the rage back once she finished casting her ultimate. So we have a few things to actually increase that chance. So A1 increases that chance to 70%, 50 plus 20. And Dolores also has an exclusive gear piece that you can only unlock in the later stages of the game, which brings this to 100%. But just ignore that for now. I'll say the big awakenings that you want to focus on is going to be, where was it? It's going to be the A1, where the inspiration effect goes from 40% to 60%, which is a very big jump. That's the awakening that you want to go after. The rest of the awakenings, I don't think they're that important early on in the game. So yeah, that's the full set of epics that I really want you to focus on if you're this early on in the game. So once again, to sum it all up, we have Wrath and Estrid, a solid single target damage dealer. Estrid, very solid AOE damage dealer that can hide behind a tank. And then for defenders, Baron and Olague are basically unkillable tanks. Make sure you have them. And then the marksman, more for AOE physical damage. Idril for the best single target epic marksman in the game. And then for mages, you have Marri and Laurel as support, Grid and Eona as damage dealers. Bear in mind that you can also use Grid as a support unit by just building him with a lot of attack speed and rage regen instead. And last but not least, for the healers, Vortex and Midan if you want very straightforward heal outputs, Hollow for rage regen, and then Dolores for inspiration. So yeah, that's a very long video. I've timestamped it for you, so make sure you jump to the parts that are more relevant for you if you're looking out for certain units. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comment section below. Try my best to answer them. And once again, if you are new here, make sure you use the promo code GET10 free draws, which is in my video description. So they get 10 free summons that you can use in the Christmas event that's coming up next week. So yeah, that's gonna be for the video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.